Welcome to Guerrilla Discipleship. So glad that you're here with us today. I'm Kevin Baker. I get to be your host from here for talking about being everyday disciple makers. Today, we're going to finish the interview that we started with Pastor Grace from Boscoville, Texas. And we're going to pick up the conversation where Pastor Grace continues to unpack how the disciple-making movement training has impacted her life and her ministry.
Grace, could I ask you this question? Because we've taken some folks through our training in the church. We've taken our staff, the board, others in the church. And I've had folks who, not a lot, we've had most of the people who take our training have stuck with it, but I have had some who drop out. But I also know there are a lot who feel exactly the way that you and I did. And that is that, oh my gosh, this is overwhelming. This is just, I don't know what to do with all of this. Knowing now, being where you are now, knowing that you've been through that, I am drowning, I'm depressed. I loved what you said about comparison. What would you tell someone who is maybe listening to this and feels overwhelmed right now? Like, I am just learning about this and it's rocking my world and I don't know how to keep moving. I don't know. I feel like quitting because I feel so out. I feel like I'm out of my league, or whatever the way that they're feeling about it. What would you tell them?
Well, for me, what ended up happening is that God used that, moving ground underneath me to help strip away my need for control. That there was a lot that I learned about, just keep putting one foot in front of the other. Don't stop moving forward. Even if you don't know what you're doing. I mean, I'm a strategy person and I like processes. So, and I want to see I don't want to see just the next step, but I want to see what, like the whole path.
Yeah.
And discipleship is not like that. I do think that as a coaching group, we could do a better job of helping people process that, like, to affirm the uncomfortability, to affirm the fact that this is a wrestling thing, that this is a seeking thing, that this is that God often creates a hunger and a desire in us so that we'll persevere through things, that's normal, that create some, sense of normalcy to that, and speak about it, like, be clear that this is part of the process, the struggle. And I think that's why Chris is so good at not giving answers. He's so frustrating to try to talk to him because you want him to tell you the answers to things. But what he does is he just keeps redirecting you back to pursuing God and pursuing God's heart and pursuing what God has for you. Because he knows that everybody's story is different and the outcome's different. The giftings are different. The call is different. And so, but I needed more of that assurance. I would have liked to have had some specific things, first of all, a group to walk with, because I'm by myself here, just with Ron and I, we didn't have a team to really process things with. So and some clear steps of obedience that I could have kind of gotten those under my belt and gained some confidence. Yeah, I think that would have been helpful.
What's so good about what you just said, that I, at least from my perspective, is, and I want to ask a question out of it. You said, and I love this, affirm the uncomfortability. And I think that's what I had too. I had the ability, because God had taken all of us as a staff through it at the same time. We were all going, does this make sense to you? I mean, how does this work? And we were affirming that it was messing with our paradigms, so that it wasn't just one of us going, I'm struggling. In fact, we were all struggling together. And I agree with you. We needed to do that and need to be sensitive to that. Do you think that, I'm going to ask a weird question here, Grace. Do you think in some ways that our culture, the U.S. culture, where we want to know what we're doing, we want to feel confident in what we're doing, we want to be able to control and feel in control, is in some ways why we don't easily disciple, because being discipled is the exact opposite. I mean, if you look at even Jesus and the disciples, they were almost always they didn't know what was going on. They were trying to catch up to him. They just lived in this. What do you think he means by this? And he would say, Howard, you guys have such little faith. What's going on here? And that uncomfortability is so countercultural to us. It makes us, we like to be the people who are in the know. A lot of people, as you said earlier about that church saying, come and see, learn and grow, go and do, or however that was. We don't want to go out and try anything until we feel like we know what we're doing. And disciple making is learning by doing rather than the other way around. Do you have any thoughts on that? I would love to hear your perspective on it.
Ask the question one more time, because we went around a little bit.
Yeah, I did. I was trying to get my thought clear. Do you feel like that cultural issue is a hindrance to the process of disciple making, even in our culture, that we like to not be uncomfortable in terms of abilities and learnings, and we don't like to be confused?
Yeah, I think it goes deeper than that. I think it has to do with fear. We have a lot of fear. We have a fear of failure, which makes you not free to try. We have a fear of ridicule, which makes you feel like if you did something, it would be potentially jeopardizing a relationship. I think as part of the fear too, we have a fear of rejection, because here you're talking to people you may not know,
right.
Or you're putting pressure on a relationship that you have that you're not sure will handle that. So I think fear has a lot to do with it. And I remember, this is my one learning thing that happened in regards to that, because obedience is, I think, related to that fear too. The question came to me, what do I fear more? Because it says the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. And I just came to that place where I just started praying, Lord, I want to fear you, reverence you, glorify you more than I'm concerned about the paralyzation that really comes from fear. And that was a huge thing, because I have a real hunger for God's glory. And so when I reframed that for myself in terms of God's glory, it was kind of like this story. My brother had this Rhodesian Ridgeback. It's a dog that's bred to fight lions. And it's the one that has the hair that goes the opposite way on the back. And it's a big dog, probably 80 pounds or so. And he had this electric fence around, and he had a little collar that the dog couldn't go outside the fence. But the dog was super protective of his kids. And of course, the kids could cross the electric fence all the time. And so he had to turn the fence up really high because this dog was very determined. And one day the kids, I think they were 7, 9 or something, went across the fence and out to play with some of their friends, ride their bikes. And the dog got close to the fence, and it gives them a warning beep, and then got a little bit closer, and it vibrates to tell him, hey, you're getting close, you're going to get zapped. And my brother was watching out the window, and he saw the dog lean back like this, almost like grit his teeth and run through that fence and get zapped and protect that. You want to be out and protect the kids and that kind of thing. But that just reminded me that, that's kind of what it's like, like, it's going to hurt, it's going to be not comfortable, it's going to challenge your social norms and whatever it happens that God might be asking you to do. But you just, the importance of being, with God and doing what God wants you to do is like greater. And you just push through the barrier.
Goodness, that is a great analogy. I love that.
I'm sorry if you're being distracted by this construction going on. You're okay? Because it's buzzing good in my ear. So, okay.
Sorry. No, you're doing a good job being distracted. If you're distracted, but not at all for me or us. So here's the question. Maybe I'll just end with this question, because I want to bring it sort of to the current. We've talked through some of the steps here. the other day I was talking to you and you shared, I think, 3 things that God had just done. Do you remember that? You were telling me like about and I can't, I'm gonna struggle right now to remember what they were, but you had, oh gosh, what was it? God had just opened 3 doors or just done 3 things in your life.
Three people.
3 people. Can you share those 3 stories real quick?
Yeah, actually, I have an update on those
Oh,
stories. So,
good.
yeah.
Good.
So, a couple of weeks ago, I'm going through a leadership training with Lifeway right now. And a couple of weeks ago in our small group, a guy named Paul we were talking, and I've been praying for a year for a team, for God to bring a team around, them to work together. And Paul encouraged me. He says, you know what, that is like, he says, I did that for a while, and it was so frustrating. He said, I want to encourage you to pray for people that you can disciple and mentor.
That's right. Yeah.
And as he said that, there were 3, is it 3 or 4? There were 4 people that came to mind. And I'm sorry, this is really loud. I'm really glad you're not hearing this because it's super loud.
We can hear just a little bit. Okay. You're very clear, so don't worry about
good.
it. Sorry, it's distracting for you.
Yeah. So one of them was a new couple that had just started coming to our church. He's totally blind and she's half blind. And then one was my cleaning lady. And then the 4th person was a bookkeeper who works with us at the skating rink that my husband and I own. And so I just began to pray. A couple of weeks ago, I just began to pray for opportunities to talk with them about this. And so every couple of weeks, I invite the church to come with me to do the Shepherd's Heart food packing. And when I showed up to do it on that Tuesday, there was this couple. He was blind and she's half blind. And they decided that, they said, well, do you think we can help? I said, absolutely. So I took him through and showed him that, had him feel the table, feel where we were going to put stuff. We had extra packing plums, 15 plums to a bag. And we just processed bags and bags of these until we filled up this container. It took us about an hour and a half. And then we went to lunch together. So at lunch, we're sitting there and we've laughed and we've had a great conversation, just been with each other. And he says, I've got a question for you about the Bible. And I said, really, what is it? And so he went into his question and he's like, and we also just don't know where to start. We have no idea where to begin, but we'd like to learn more about God. We'd like to read the Bible. And I said, well, Sherry and I, because one of the ladies who went with me to the park also went that morning to Shepherd's Heart. And I said, well, Sherry and I have a simple way that we can show you about how to learn about God in the comfort of your own home and with your family and friends. Is that something you'd be interested in? And they're like, yes, we would really like that. So we set a time, and yesterday was the time. It was the sweetest time I think I've ever experienced.
Oh, man.
I didn't realize this, and I guess I had forgotten to say this, but they had spent the week cleaning their house. They had prepared a whole brunch for us.
Oh my gosh.
When we came, and they were expecting for me to come and teach them from the Bible. And the fact that she texted me later and she's like, you have opened up a whole new world to me. I had no idea that I could do this, that I could read the Bible and get something from it with other people.
Wow.
And so that was just beautiful. So after that same day, after I had talked with them and said, hey, and they had agreed to study, when I got to work that day, and I'm like, hey, the coolest thing happened at Shepherd's Heart this morning, because she's also volunteered sometimes with me. And she was like, what happened? And then I told her, and I said, and I got to thinking, is that something that you would like to learn so that you and Harper can, because her daughter's, I think, 10, that you and Harper can start to do together? And she was like, I would love that. I would really
this
love
is your bookkeeper
that.
at the roller rink.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then tomorrow I'm going to see my cleaning lady, and I'm going to have that conversation with her. And so, I am just so amazed that just that change in prayer, and that I guess God felt after 2 years, I'm finally ready. I'm finally a disciple worth multiplying.
Oh,
And that's what that's what it feels like to me, that God has brought me to a place where I'm doing it from a place of love, not from a place of numbers, not from a place of building a silo or building a kingdom, but I'm doing it from a place of love.
wow.
So, yeah.
Grace, that's I don't think I can not think of a better way to end our time. But I want to give you the last word. Is there anything that I haven't asked about, or any story that you want to tell, anything about the disciple making movement training, its impact on you? If you don't have anything else, that's fine. But if you do, I don't want to limit what God's laid on your heart to share. Is there anything?
Just recently, I was in 2 Corinthians, and I was looking at sometimes how the Spirit will speak to me about what I'm supposed to study. Is He'll bring a fraction of a verse, and I won't know where it's from. I know I've heard it before. I've never studied it necessarily. And then what I do is I go look up that verse and then read the context around it. And that's how God starts to speak to me. So this past week, the verse where this part of the verse was something about strength being made something in weakness. And I couldn't even pull like what it exactly was. And so I went and I was looking at that passage where Paul is talking about that. But I backed up a bit, and I had not seen this before, that the thorn in the flesh, we always talk about the thorn in the flesh. We always think about the thorn in the flesh. We always think about weakness. But the reality was that the thorn in the flesh was given to him because God didn't want him to get too elated, not conceited, but too joyful. Like, right. You could sometimes, if you're over the top joyful with people, they're like, what? Kind of, and so this thorn in the flesh was given him so that he wouldn't become over elated, and I was like, wow. And then it uses in the next part, which it's not always translated this way, but he says, therefore, that God's strength, or God's power, it could be translated, God's power is perfected by being weak. It's a verb. It's not weakness. It's by being weak. And I was like, wow, I feel weak so much of the time when I'm walking through this discipleship, but that's exactly where God wants me to be. And as I've gone through these 2 years, there's been lots of persecution. I almost lost my husband 3 different times to 3 different situations. I've had a gastrointestinal thing I had to get over. I had bulging discs in my neck right before Dr. Isla came to visit. There's been lots of persecution, multiple issues with my house, lots of water leaks, all kinds of things. But I just kept telling the enemy, look, I'm not giving up. This is my calling. I will be a disciple maker. I will do this.
That is awesome.
And that's the sense you get from Paul in that 2 Corinthians passage. He said, so I take delight in persecutions, tribulations, insults, basically all the things that were coming at him. And so the wonderful thing that I'm coming to is this place of joy where I just laugh. I just begin to laugh at these things. Like right after I finished this Bible study yesterday, this discovery Bible study with this couple. And by the way, her very shy daughter who won't come to church came to the DBS and participated, and they were shocked.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. So that already pulled her family. But anyway, right after I'm leaving there on my way to work, I get a call that we have a water leak at the house and my husband's had to turn off the water. And I just started laughing to myself. I'm like, yes, if I'm persecuted, if I'm getting throwback, if I'm getting pushback, I am just in the right place. And I'm not giving up. I'm not giving up. So that's my final word. That's just new learning from last week that you got this morning.
Grace, thank you so much for your time. This has been so awesome. I have learned a lot, and I'm with you. I'm not giving up either. Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here as a part of this conversation. I hope and trust that you enjoyed Pastor Grace. I know that you must have been able to glean something out of the conversation that's going to encourage you in your next step of obedience in disciple-making movement. And we're going to gather next week as with family and friends to celebrate the birth of Jesus. If you're interested in disciple-making training, please reach out to me at kbaker@oakdale.church. And I can get you the information about our next training session that will start after the holidays. So I'm glad you're a part of Guerrilla Discipleship. Remember, we will not be with you next week because of Christmas, but we'll join you the week after. God bless you. Have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. We'll see you again in January.